Let's start with you, Basil. What is your response to those who say this call for schools to be closed is reactionary?
We've called for the closure of schools not because we are reacting to any pressure. We are calling it because we are reacting to the signs of the times. So in a sense, yes, we are reacting to the logic of the World Health Organization, which is saying to us that schools should not be open when the pandemic is at its peak. It should not be open when community infections are at its peak. Our own state president has said to us that the storm is upon us. So logic suggests that we need to look at the signs and ask ourselves, is this the right time to still be at school? Now, as NAPTOSA has never called for the summary closure of schools, we still believe that the best place for children is in a school. But that is not at all costs. That has to be balanced against the logic of the time. And our teachers' mental state is fragile at the moment. Given all the news that they are bombarded with, many of them, you see fear in their eyes if you simply just pass them, and they can no longer hold the fort there. The quality of education is not what it should be. In addition, the children are not at school. There are thousands of children not attending. And it is not true to create an impression that school attendance is all fine. It is not fine. The vast majority of provinces are reporting large numbers of kids that are not in attendance. And that is why NAPTOSA says this is the time to reassess calmly and to look at the situation and to make a decision in the best interest of teachers, of parents, of children, and the community at large.
Allen Thompson, is NATU reactionary?
Well, no, not at all. Not at all. Good morning. But what is important is to indicate that initially we were very hesitant. We told the Department of Basic Education that reopening of schools was still premature. But unfortunately, we agreed with the department that at least we are going to prioritize grade 12. But then the department decided to sneak in grade 7, and later they imposed grade 11 and grade 6 to us without any consultation. Now, when we read what is happening on the ground, it's very clear that many teachers are getting infected day in and day out. And the worst part is the failure now of the department to observe the protocol that we agreed upon. That should any teacher test positive, that particular school needs to be closed. And those people must be subjected to an isolation process, of which such things are not happening. In other schools, cases are being reported, but the principal of school will simply keep quiet with the information and recommend to that affected teacher to go home. And the schools continues as normal as possible without even members of staff being told what is really happening. So that is why then, as the National Teachers Union, we are worried. Just on Friday, we were told that there is a principal of a school who is on an ICU, but unfortunately his school is operational. And teachers are not even aware that the principal of a school has been hospitalized, and for that matter is in an ICU, and no one from the school was isolated, and they've been addressed by the principal of a school every day in his office. They come to his office just to make sure that they sign attendance. But above all, we have seen also what the World Health Organization is saying. It's saying for every country to open schools, they must wait for the infections to subside. Unfortunately, in this country, the infections are now above 10,000 a day. The number of fatalities is also increasing. That on its own suggests that schools are part of the community. If the infection is very high in the community, you can expect that the infection will also be high in the schools. But the worst part is that the Department of Basic Education has also failed to meet the basic requirements, hygiene basic requirements that we agreed upon. We still have schools that are without toilets. We still have schools that are without water. We have not employed additional teachers simply because we have reduced the class size from 80 in other schools to 25. But there are no additional teachers employed. Teachers with comorbidities are at home, and there are no replacement that have been employed until now. Effectively, there is no proper teaching and learning that is happening in our schooling system. Hence, for the call we are making now to say we need to wait for the peak at least we need to come up with other measures to accommodate grade 12, which can also include getting isolation camps where they can be taught. Remember, the country has already rented many hotels which are not being utilized because people prefer to be quarantined in their home. And those hotels are being paid for, while learners, grade 12 in particular, they need safe areas so that they can continue with the curriculum. We have put another option of making sure that all the grade 12 learners are having the laptop computer, in particular those that are coming from the disadvantaged communities, so that we can have a continuous online learning. A learning without any contact is the one that is needed during this critical period.
Basil, Manuel, Allen Thompson reiterates what you said about complying with the recommendations of the World Health Organization. How do we counter that with the scientific arguments that are coming out of South Africa from scientists saying it's all well for kids to go back to school?
I'm sure in a perfect world it is all well to go to school. However, we've got to look at the context of our own schools, and we've got to look at the context of our own teachers. And yes, I am not disputing the fact that, in fact, science is saying that children are less infectious and that they don't get infected so easily. But the reality of our situation is that our schools are hardly open. There have been infections every day, and in any given province, 60 to 80 schools close every day. In addition to that, we are having stayaways from our parents who are just terrified. In addition to that, the mental health of our teachers. So you cannot only look at the science from one side. You've got to look at the science in terms of the impact on the human life as it stands at the moment. And when I don't believe any of our scientists have done any research on the impact on the mental health of parents and of teachers. And so the science is one-sided. I'm not disputing its correctness in terms of that side, but I am saying look at the other side as well, and then ask yourself, is it still so easy to say that it is okay for schools to be open during the peak? But then, is the World Health Organization not basing its information on science? How can they then summarily dismiss that science as well, which is guiding the rest of the world? Why are we then so different?
Yeah. Mr. Thompson, you said something which I find quite interesting, but it speaks to the broader conversation that's taking place in the country at the moment. And you were saying that in an area, if an area has high infections, it makes sense that the schools in that area will have high infections as well. This take, for me, speaks into that conversation where we talk about children who have access to Wi-Fi and data and being able to continue with school while at home, and those societies that do not have this access. Are we not perpetuating that very thing that we've been trying to fight for the longest time since democracy in South Africa, and that's inequality in our societies?
Well, yes, indeed. Remember our initial position as trade unions. Remember again, opening of schools was a compromise position. We wanted each and every school to be ready to be COVID-19 compliant, but unfortunately, we ended up compromising, saying, let those schools that are ready to reopen to open. And again, that decision was, again, advantaging those who are coming from the former Model C schools, schools that had a benefit of all the necessary resources, schools that only required a general assistant to come and sweep the floor and be ready to teach. But there are those schools that are from rural areas and schools that are in the township, which are historically disadvantaged schools. Some of those schools, they've not reopened their grade 12. And there's nothing that has been done to try to accommodate those learners. Hence, we even wrote several letters to the Minister of Basic Education requesting to get a program from each province indicating that what plan did they put in place to try to accommodate those learners that whose schools could not reopen. But we have never received such programs, except that we were told that they were just taken to the neighboring schools, of which, as people who are on the ground, we know for the fact that never happened in various provinces. Hence our call now to say, we want the department to make sure that we put all resources together, the Department of Basic Education, together with the Department of Higher Education and Training and NSFAS. Remember, the matriculants are likely to join the higher education institutions next year, and currently the Department of Higher Education is buying laptops for the learners so that they can be able to benefit from the online learning. Hence, then we are saying we want resources to be put together and make sure that all those learners who do not have the tablets or an iPad or any form of a gadget that can be utilized for them to communicate constantly with teachers. We have made a call for all teachers, particularly those who are doing grade 12, also to be given gadgets so that they can liaise with the students and be able to continuously prepare them, assist them to finish the curriculum, so that at the end of the year, if I'm talking about the end of the year, I'm not talking about necessarily November, December, whatever period that we can agree upon with the department, owing to the fact that it's not business as usual, we have COVID-19 in place, then they will be ready to write their examination. Another serious concept which I will appreciate to raise is that we are pretending now as if matric is a holy cow. It's something that was created somewhere. We cannot plan around it. We must stick to January, December kind of an academic year, even when the situation does not allow us to do that. Hence, we have made such call that let the department close the schools and prepare itself adequately. Whether we are taking an online route, we follow that online route. Whether we are taking an isolation camp kind of a route, particularly for grade 12, let them prepare. But it's very, very dangerous to continue with teaching and learning when the spread of virus is so high in the Republic of South Africa.
Mr. Manuel, were the unions informed as to why the meeting with the minister has been postponed?
No, in fact, we haven't. And the minister we got a message late yesterday or late last night that the meeting has been postponed. We certainly hope that the meeting will take place, if not today, then tomorrow, because there are serious matters to discuss, not only the call from various unions, but also the plan ahead, because we are not about just the one thing. We need to also look at what is the strategy going to be going forward. What are we going to do about assessments? What are we going to do about the matriculants? What are we going to do about continued education for those who at the moment, as you say, are excluded from the mainstream in terms of online education? We have certain proposals to make there. As NAPTOSA, we want to have an opportunity to put these before the minister. We've had many occasions to talk, but at this stage, it has become absolutely critical that we look at where we are at now and why we want to do certain things at this minute. We can't be fixated on a calendar. We can't be fixated about examinations. We've got to be fixated on the lives and the health and well-being of both the children and the teachers and also the parents, because the parents are a major stakeholder in all of this.
With you a bit, Mr. Manuel, what are your thoughts about the work of the Ministerial Advisory Committee in terms of the content that they have been putting out?
In terms of the content of the curriculum?
In the conversation about going back to school. Let me say this.
In relation to going back to school, we are adamant that at some point we have to go back to school. And we are not at odds with the view that says we have to go, but we are at odds with the view that says it must happen at all costs. We know that there have been blunders. There have been many schools that haven't opened, and there are many schools that are not properly prepared for opening. Now, if you look at the very regulations that were published on Sunday night, you will see that principals are being held now to account to ensure that the correct PPEs are at school. But for heaven's sake, it is the department delivering it. And if the principal then says, we don't have the correct thing, we must close schools, the very department says to principals, you can't close the schools. So we are at odds with views that don't make sense. And it doesn't make sense to simply say, it doesn't matter the situation, let's just blunder ahead and forget about the impact this has on the very people that we hope will make education a success. I'm telling you now, if the mental health of teachers is not looked at, then the quality of learning and teaching will not be of the standard we want it to be. And that is what is happening at the moment. Our people are fearful, our people are anxious, and that is why we are calling on the minister to carefully look at what is happening out there.
Mr. Thompson, your thoughts about the postponement and how the Ministerial Advisory Committee is guiding the minister?
Well, firstly, let me indicate that we were very disappointed when we learned that the meeting has been postponed. I personally also tried this morning just to find out perhaps the reasons behind the postponement of the meeting. And I was told that the minister was still finalizing engagement with other stakeholders in the education sector. And well, we were convinced that we are one of the very important stakeholders, of which perhaps the minister should have prioritized having a meeting with us, because we are the ones that are to assist learners to learn, prepare them for an examination. And at the moment, our members are so frustrated. At the moment, they've been told that their fellow colleagues, the one that they were sharing staff room with, have tested positive for COVID-19. And unfortunately, they've never been given a chance for isolation. And some of them are still waiting for the Department of Health to come to school and assist them in terms of doing their COVID-19 test. And those things have never happened. They have seen also learners who came to school with their parents to report that they've already tested positive, and some of those learners are the learners that have been given extra support, very close, in less than a meter kind of an interaction. But unfortunately, the school principal said the Department of Health will come and give advice to the school on what is supposed to happen. Some they've waited for more than 7 days. I want to make an example of a district office where they learn about the case on the 18th of June. But they closed the institution on the 1st of July, and the workers were only tested on the 3rd of July. That's a kind of frustration that our teachers, our members are finding themselves in. We are worried about the kind of advice that is being given, because at some point we are told that this is the route we are supposed to follow, and we'll follow that route. Then we'll get another advice. Initially, we were told that whoever that has tested positive must be isolated for at least 14 days, but it's no longer the case. Schools are being closed for 2 days. On the 3rd day, they will come and fumigate. On the 4th day, the teachers are expected to come and teach, while others have not even received their results, whether they've tested positive or negative. So we are worried about the level of confusion. We are worried about, again, the recommendations we are getting from the scientists of the Republic of South Africa, which are contravening what is being said by the World Health Organization, which is an organization that has been monitoring the impact of this pandemic, where it started in 2019, but this pandemic started in South Africa in 2020. And it is only now that we are approaching a peak. But we are starting to ignore what the World Health Organization is saying. We are ignoring the other practices that are being done in other countries, in as far as the reopening of schools is concerned, in as far as the period for isolation is concerned, in as far as all other measures are concerned. That is why we felt it will be appropriate for us to sit down with the minister and try to share the scripts so that we can be able to understand each other. We do not want to fight with the department. COVID-19 must allow us to unite as much as possible so that we can be able to defeat it.
Mr. Manuel, are the unions united in this conversation?
I think by and large we are singing from the same hymn book. Our concerns are the same. I can't speak on behalf of other unions and what they have called for because I haven't necessarily seen all the calls. But we as a collective of teacher unions have been talking together for a long time, and on all the main issues we agree. We agree that schools can't open if they are not safe. We agree on the fact that there are some non-negotiables. And we've been talking together for a long time. That there would be points of difference is a matter of course. But I don't think we are disagreeing on the fundamentals. But each union will speak for themselves. But as for NAPTOSA, we are certainly in agreement with the view that says that at this stage, schools cannot be open. It would be reckless to continue as though there is nothing wrong out there.
And what about NATU?
Well, we are working as a collective with all other trade unions. I think members of society, they have seen that we have been issuing statements, joint statements for that matter. And even now, we are saying it is not safe for both teachers and learners to continue going to school under the current situation. And that on its own, it shows that as much as we belong to different trade unions, but we are saying one and the same thing. And I believe that it's important for the Department of Basic Education to notice that unions or trade unions are saying together, they feel like they are not safe. As long as they are working under these conditions, as long as the spread is so high, they are saying we cannot continue like this. So that on its own, to me, it suggests that all the trade unions are singing, like Basil is saying, from the same hymn book, and the Department of Education will have to support what we are saying as much as we have supported the department to attempt to reopen the schools. We've supported them when they said, let's go and teach grade 12. We've supported them when they said we must teach grade 7. We supported them when they wanted us to teach grade 11 and 6, even if we have not agreed to that. So it's time for them to take some step backs and say, now these people are saying this. It means that it is really serious out there and we need to retract. We must wait for this virus to subside. And then we can take a step forward after checking all our mirrors, and it is safe for us to do so.
Well, I will agree with you on one point that is truly confusing for learners who are trying to make decisions about the way forward. And I want to ask both of you, as I thank you for having this conversation with us today. Mr. Manuel, a learner watching this conversation now and trying to make decisions about the future, what should they be doing?
I think most learners will look at us and say, those people care, because those people are thinking about us, because we haven't abandoned them. We are still saying that we believe that learning must happen and that we must find the correct modalities for learning to happen. So I think that they will take comfort in that. And certainly I will encourage them to take comfort in that, because we do have the best interest of the learners and the teachers at heart.
Mr. Thompson, what should we be saying to South African learners seeking answers from leaders such as unions and the department?
Well, I think learners, they are very proud of their teachers right now, because we are the only ones that are fighting for them to get water. They don't have access to water. We are the only people who are raising concerns about the devastating state of the toilets they are using. We are the people that are complaining about the quality of the PPEs they are receiving from the department. We are the ones that are fighting for them to have reduced classes so that they can get a closer attention to individual teachers. Because when they are trained in the classroom, it means that it becomes easy for the teacher to identify those weak learners who require some assistance. Also, we are the ones that have justified for the observance of the social distancing in the classroom. So I think wherever they are seeing people who are having the best interest of their education at heart. They are seeing people who are so concerned, especially for those who are doing matric, that we are very much concerned about them finishing the curriculum while still alive, being able to wait for the results, because we are afraid that we'll be teaching learners who are not even going to get the results, who will be in the graveyard when their results are being released by the Department of Basic Education. But the parents, they've already taken a decision. We are seeing the attendance at schools. Schools are having 20% attendance, 10% at some point, 5 learners in one class. That on its own, it shows that parents, they've already taken their conscious decision. They are saying what we are saying. They are saying because the department does not want to listen, the only thing they could do is to safeguard the interest of their children by keeping them at home. But we will make everything possible in our power to make sure that they do not forfeit a year, and also to make sure that when the time comes, they are able to move from grade 12, those who are doing grade 12, and go to the university, join the workplace, do whatever they want to do after they've completed matric. But that can only happen if and only if they are still alive. Hence, we want them to survive this pandemic.
Basil, Manuel is with NAPTOSA and Allen Thompson is with NATU education unions engaging with the Department of Education about the reopening of schools during the peak of COVID-19. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for taking the time to talk to us this morning. We also asked our viewers today to